yourself to an extent that you showed you were more determined than the next fella to you in order to get a bit of work. But the type of work that was available, you had Ranks Mill, which was very big. You had the dockyard. Most of the work was casual. You had the cement factory, and you had about 4, I would say, bacon factories, and you had a clothing factory. So it's quite a bit really for a small city. But don't forget that catered for the whole of the county of Limerick, not just the city.
Right.
So when you're speaking of being, there must have been plenty of jobs around with that much industry around. When you cater for the whole of the county, it's not. Also, during my time, even modernisation did begin to creep in. And in the 50s and 60s, you will have found that a lot of the factories had closed. Because they moved into a bigger base, maybe down country or something like that. Ranks, from my point of view, from mid-40s, when I was available to work, I used to get casual work at Ranks, doing a man's work and getting a boy's wage, while the man that was 22 and 23 above me, right, was getting about 20 shillings a day. I was getting 7 and 6. But doing more work probably than the man. The docks were very, very hard. I used to get casual work there. And there used to be coal boats coming in, and we'd hear about it, so we'd be down there 7:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, lining up with probably 500 other people to put ourselves forward to get about 10 jobs. And everybody, and sometimes, unfortunately, it got physical. Because poor fathers looking after their children were fighting to get a job, and you pushed you around, you pushed them, and it got that way a little bit. Not intent, it was through frustration trying to get a job. There'd be a little bit of, how would I say, fisticuffs could occur now and again. You had to toughen up. I remember getting days' works on the coal boats. And they came in and you had to dig from the top of the hold to the bottom. Digging coal with what we call a 16, 18-inch shovel that bounced when you hit. And you had to fill tubs that was brought up. Very, very hard. You had welts in your hand no matter how hard your hands were. And then, of course, we had the salt boats just come in. The cruelest of the lot. They give you a job to know you're a worker, get a day's work, but there'd be maybe half a dozen men in the hold with shovels filling a tub. 2 men at the top holding a bag, a sack, as we call it. The tub would be tipped into the sack, no bigger than that, would weigh anything between, I'd say, 14 and 20 stone of loose salt. And those 2 men would lift that bag onto your back. And I did it at 14 years of age. I'd go home to my mother at night and she'd have to peel the shirt off me, gently, and rub Vaseline on my skin, because my skin was red raw. And the black shoes you had on were white. Excuse me. It was slavery. You had a bag on your back, I would say, on an average, every 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And you didn't just carry it from the ship, you carried it up ramps. And the more salt that got on the ramp, the slippier it got. No matter what, it not being slippy, it got wet and very slippy. Big wooden ramps. As high, maybe 50 feet. On your back, going up. Bags of slag, you ever heard of slag as a manure? They'd come in, they only looked this size, but they weighed an average of 16 stone. And you got a 14 and 15-year-old with that on his back. You climbed with that, heights, 100 feet, trying to put it in a big square. the wages you got were pathetic, because the grown men, as we called them in those days, got a bigger wage than what I would get. And that type of work came rarely. You might get it every month, and you might get it every 6 weeks. A ship come in, timber boat. Now you handle timber, right? And when you're handling timber boats, you just had to grab it. There was no such thing as gloves, right? You handled it, you put it on your shoulders. I'm talking about big planks, I can assure you. Putting them on your shoulders. No time to pick splinters out. You pick the splinters out for hours later. You never felt it anymore. Cuts, bleeding, you know, and repeating myself, going back to the salt, I'll never forget it. The soreness in the back, right down your legs, the front of your legs, right, red raw.
So can you tell us a little bit, Harry, about your life in Bolton when you first arrived and the Bolton scene for Irish people?
Yes, when I first arrived to Bolton, it was 1955, and I was working for a company called Woodall and Duckham, and we pulled into town here to work on the gasworks. During that period, I didn't meet many Irish because I didn't know where to go. I got some digs down off Church Bank in a place called Fairfield Street. A few Irish stayed there, but my picture of the Irish in that time hadn't grown to an extent where I could make observations and give you a bit of history about them, because I was so involved in my work that I worked late hours and so forth here and a few bob. However, after several months here, we moved to Oldham. And I won't go on too much about Oldham, but there was Irish there, I was going to Irish pubs there. Also, I moved from there to Harlem. Now comes the real period of time that I spent Bolton. Now in Bolton, I arrived back here in the back end of 1956. My experience in Bolton is very unlike what it was down south, as I informed you before about anti-Irishness and sleeping rough and people telling anti-Irish jokes, and we've been treated like we were second-class citizens and so forth. But I found in the north of England, and in particular in Bolton, that anti-Irishness didn't really apply. You might get the odd little bit from the odd person, you know, the patronising bit. My grandmother was Irish and my grandfather was Irish and so forth. And most of that you left go over your shoulder. There was only two reasons for that. One was to patronise you, or the other was to be pleasant and nice so you can get on in company. So you had a decision to make which way to read that. But I began to go to a place called the Blue Boar, and I met a lot of Irish there. Very pleasant people, hard-working people, and it was run by a fella called Austin Coyne at the time. Now, at weekends in that pub, you couldn't move. He ran a very good house, he was a good businessman, and we had music there, and that way you got to know the Irish more.
How old were you when you came over to Ireland, and why did you come?
I was 20. I came probably for a bit of adventure or whatever. All Irish men and women like to travel.
What year did you arrive in Bolton?
52.
And what job did you do then?
I was on telephone communications. Now don't put all that down. We were putting the ducts in the ground for the telephones. It's only a fancy name, you know.
What year did you meet your wife?
Oh, I'd say about 53.
And what's her maiden name?
My maiden name is Jones,
And what's the first name?
Marjorie.
And what year did you get married?
59.
What hobbies did you do when you came to Bolton?
Well, football. Played with a team in Wigan called St. Bridget's.
And how long did you play football for?
About 2 years then, until we formed the Shannon Rangers in Bolton.
Where you got to?
When I came to Bolton, I played football in Ireland before I came. And then when I came to Bolton, I wanted to play with any club that was, that needed me or allow me to play. So I went to heard about this club in Wigan, St. Bridget's Wigan, that's what we call them. But they hadn't enough of players to continue on. So there was probably out of 15 players on St. Bridget's team, there would probably be 10 of them from Bolton. So then we decided we'd leave Wigan and form our own club here, form the Shannon Rangers. So that's how it all started,
Well, I can't remember how it was broken to me, but I do remember on the day we were leaving, it was just total bewilderment as to where we were going, because I couldn't envisage as to what was coming to me. Just hadn't got a clue. We took the trip up to Dublin and we got on the boat in Dunleary. Never seen a ship before, no mind be on one. And we can't remember the crossing then, because those boats them days, we used to call them cattle ships, I think. And you used to sit on a case. We're going across, and I can remember so well, and I'll always remember it. All I'm doing is going to the toilet to be sick every 10 minutes because it was really rough seas. And that really added, I wouldn't call it fear, I don't know what I'd call it, I don't know what I'd call it then. Anyway, we eventually got into Bolton, and like I said, I didn't know what to expect, and we got to the house where we were living, which was number 12 Grecian Street, which is it's no longer there anymore. I know now it was just an old mill house, no hot water, flag floor, outside toilet, which I'd never even known, because I'm going up the stairs to the toilet and they said, down here, outside, and I didn't even know what one was. I'd never even seen one. The actual atmosphere of the actual town, because we came from a semi-rural area into a smoky mill town in Lancashire, that was a culture shock, even though I was only 7-year-old. It was just amazing. Once we did get settled in, we had things like having a bath, going to the slipper baths around the corner on, just off Lever Street it was, where people did the washing, and you had a bath there. It cost a penny to have a bath. Once a week, by the way, very clean us, once a week. What else can I remember about that now? Yeah, the house, because there was only a two-bedroom house, the mum and dad obviously had one bedroom, and there was 4 of us, 4 lads, and we all slept in the same bedroom. I think there was 3 of us in one double bed. They had bedsteads. The coats over because it were absolutely freezing. That's really sticks out in my mind. We didn't stay there long, but it seems like from where I lived in Ireland to what I moved to in England was from a really nice house with a big garden, like I said, a chicken run and vegetable plot, to a little house in a smelly part of the world. I thought the living standards were down. We'd gone downhill, not uphill. But obviously that didn't last for too long. I mean, we stayed there for a few years. I do remember some things that comes to mind about it, because I'd never seen a television before. I didn't know what a television was. I do remember that because I went up to my Auntie Jane's and they had a telly, but obviously black and white at the time. And they switched this telly on and I was totally amazed, absolutely amazed. I mean, I've been to the cinema before, but I'd never seen one of these things. And I thought, when you switched it off, and you switched it back on, it was the same thing, continued. I just really did. And I do remember another time I went up to my aunties who lived in Braemere, and it was near November the 5th, and they bought me some fireworks. And I threw them on the fire in the front room. And I couldn't believe it. And then they got this big metal thing and they stuck it on the front of the fire whilst all the fireworks went off in the house. Because I had never seen them either. So it was a bit of a culture shock in that respect.
So my mother said, go over and see how you like it. You can always come back. I'll mind the children and go. So I went in September in 46, and in January, the 2nd of January, I got 2 telegrams. My mother died, and I had to come back. I had to come back.
But you didn't really want to come over, really, did you, Mum?
I
It was
didn't
just that my
want
dad
to
were
come
over.
but she said, well, you can't be separated from your husband, she said, and
Yeah.
see if you don't like it, come back. But she died
When she was
that
over.
January on me, and I came back. So I was only in one room over here in Devonport Street at the time when I first came over.
Is that in Bolton?
Yeah,
Yeah.
off Vernon Street.
Yeah, and the lady that owned the house said to me when I go on, she says, come back and bring the children with you. She said, don't be separated again. So,
Was this an English lady or an Irish lady?
not an English lady, Mrs. Kilfoyle. And so I went back, and I was about 6 weeks back while she was trying to save a bit of money to bring us over. And I went over that February, the end of February, and when I landed here, it was snow sky high on the floor, and it was hard coming over. The trains wouldn't go with the snow, and we were stuck in Dublin Road in the bus, freezing. Me and the 2 kids, children.
You're pregnant at all.
And I didn't know then, I was expecting Patrick here as well, and I had these 2 cases, big heavy cases, and the 2 little children cried.